So let's start. Now, for those who are regular viewers here, you might be wondering, Neil looks slightly different today. Don't worry, Neil is still going to be here. I'll just be taking him for maybe a first few minutes. Now, the topic today is about suicide, and the aim of today is changing the narrative on suicide and actually starting that conversation. Now, before we do start, I want to emphasize that I want to give a trigger warning that this session does discuss sensitive topics. So at any time, if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel, this may be too much for you, feel free to leave the call or switch off your camera. We'll have this conversation recorded anyway for you. We're also going to paste a bunch of helplines that you can talk to if you ever feel discomfort during this call, after this call, or at any time. So that should get sent over to you now. Now, I also want to let you know that we will be recording this conversation. This is so we can spread the word about suicide prevention and start that conversation. But at any time, if there are any topics discussed that are quite concerning or quite personal, we will edit them out. Now, to start, how many of you have experienced suicidal thoughts? You don't have to answer this if you don't feel comfortable, but give a hands up or put a hands up yourself. Thank you for your response. Now, how many of you know someone who has taken their life or tried to take their own life? Thank you as well. Now, finally, how many of you have never experienced suicidal thoughts and don't know anyone who has tried to take their own life? And that's fine if you don't. We appreciate it because the aim of today is to talk about all perspectives and understand the reasons to why. Now, like I said, the session is being recorded and we'll paste the link afterwards to where you can access the recording. Now, a little bit about ourselves. Now, firstly, my name's Kevin. I'm a project manager here at Stress Management Site and International Wellbeing Insights. Now, International Wellbeing Insights is our more corporate side of the company, and we focus on providing wellbeing insights to actual companies professionally and wellbeing at the workplace. While Stress Management Site is our non-profit organization that aims to help individuals, such as you doing this webinar today. This was founded by our founder, Shah, who will be joining us shortly. And the aim of the Stress Management Society is to form a happier, healthier, and more resilient world. Now, just a few rules before we start this webinar. It would be nice to see everyone's faces here. Now, I know it's quite a sensitive topic, so it's understandable if your cameras are not on. We will be asking questions, and we would love interaction, whether that's using the chat or putting your hand up, and we can try to get some discussions going. The more participation, the better. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the end of this if you have any personal questions for Neil. Now, just some ground rules. Be on time. I see a lot of people are here on time, so we appreciate that. We want you to be here now. I know that a lot of you might be on your lunch break and you might be eating or doing some emails, but let's try to be present for this conversation. Let's try to limit our distractions. Let's try actually participate. Let's hear everyone out. Let's be honest. If you want to hear someone out, let's hear them out. Keep an open mind as well. You never know, someone's opinion might change yours. And what's most important about all this is our safeguarding confidentiality. Whatever happens here and whatever is said here will stay in this conversation, unless there is something concerning and we have to take it to the next level. Now, finally, before we start, we do have a purple paper, like we like to call it, that talks about the changing the narrative on suicide and actually goes into detail about the topics we discussed today and provides further information. We'll also paste the link below. Now, I'm going to name some facts about suicide that are quite concerning. 16 people die by suicide every day in the UK alone. It's the leading cause of death between ages of 20 to 34, and that's worldwide. Now think about it. There's so many types of death, murder, cancer, but suicide is the leading one at this age. What's more concerning is, even with all the wars going on, that equate to 250,000 deaths. Murders added to 500,000 deaths around the world. But guess how much suicide caused? 800,000 lives. Even with murder and war put together, suicide has taken more lives in this year than any other cause. Now, 1 in 5 of us will experience these suicidal thoughts throughout our lives. 60% of us don't even seek support. Why is that? Now, before we continue, we're going to play this video, and there's something to reflect upon. And afterwards, we'll have Neil sharing his own personal stories and his own personal barriers. And finally, how can we overcome these barriers? So I'll just play this video now.
There's no sound.
There should be sound now.
No.
You're going to need to stop the recording and then put it back on again with your sound on your Teams.
My apologies, guys. We're having some technical issues with that one. We're going to post the link into the chat. So just watch it at your own pace, because we can hear it here, but it feels like some of you can't hear it. So we're literally just going to put the link in. If you watch it and then just come back into the room when you're ready. So it's about 3 minutes long. So we'll start again in about 3 minutes. The video is called "You Are Not Alone," and it's just about to be shared. In fact, yes, it's there. So if you just scroll up, the link is there. So enjoy watching the video. We'll see you back in a couple of minutes.
Hi, could you post it again, please? I can't find it. Can anyone hear me?
It should be sent to you again now in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
If the university's system is blocking it, guys, you can watch this on YouTube.
I haven't got the
You
link.
just need the name of it. Yeah, you just need the name of it to watch it on our own YouTube. I think that might be the quickest way. It happens, doesn't it, with these systems? What's it called, guys?
Again, please. Oh, You Are Not Alone. I see that name now. Thanks.
Yeah, Bo Dixon's very kindly shared the YouTube link that that should be able to play on all the systems.
Yeah, it was produced by Norwich City Football Club. Very powerful. Definitely worth watching and understanding. You know how those around us. Nothing's as it seems.
lost it altogether now.
All I can see is loads of Michael Jackson videos coming up. Oh my gosh, I give up. Sorry, I'll have to find it another time.
Yeah, I've given up as well.
So, firstly, I'm sorry if some of you weren't able to watch it. The link was put into the chat function, but it seems like some of you weren't able to open it. We will send an email out with a link to it. You can easily find it on YouTube. It's just the Norwich Union, checking on those around you. So, yeah, apologies for those of you that weren't able to see it. For those of you that did, how many found that video powerful? How many of you actually expected the guy that wasn't the happy, bubbly one to be the one that was struggling? And this is part of the challenge. We often don't know what is going on for the people around us. Particularly people that are really struggling might put a mask on, might actually outwardly be presenting an image that does not marry to how they're doing within themselves. And that's why I wanted to start this discussion with that in mind. As Kevin said, and firstly, a big round of applause to Kevin. This is the first time he's presented for us. I've thrown him into the deep end. I said, tough subject. We're going to have quite a big audience. I would like you to start. And he was like, yeah, sure. So I'm really grateful to him for doing that. This is also a tough subject for me, and I will get into that in a moment, because the reason I do this work, I set up the Stress Management Society 21 years ago, not off the back of professional or academic experience. I set this organization up off the back of a breakdown and an attempted suicide. That's why I do this work. This isn't my job. This is my life's calling. I didn't choose this path chose me. And when I found myself in a situation where everything I defined my life by disappeared in a very short period of time. I was running a successful business. I lost it. Most of the money that I had was gone. Most of the people I thought were my closest friends turned their back on me. The person I was in a relationship was cheating on me. That all happened in a very short space of time. And I got to the point where it felt like there was no reason to continue. The emotional pain I was in was so great that I would have chosen any course of action to end that pain, even if that meant turning the off switch, seeking a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And thankfully, I failed, but I learned a lot from that experience. In fact, it was probably one of the most powerful, pivotal, seminal experiences I've had in my life. It's helped me to become who I am today. And today, in 2024, at the last count, we've reached more than 100 million people with the various different programs and campaigns that we've run over the years. We started Stress Awareness Month, and that in itself reaches tens of millions of people every year. We've run projects around the world. We've reached many people with our non-profit and charitable programs. None of that would have happened if I hadn't had that experience. So I'm actually weirdly going to say I am grateful that I had that experience, because I don't know where I'd be and what I'd be doing if I hadn't had that experience. I wouldn't be working in mental health for sure. But what's interesting, even though it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life, for 15 years after it happened, I hadn't told anyone other than the handful of people that knew it happened at the time. It was my little secret, even though I worked in this field and I was doing my best to help other people that are having challenges with their mental and emotional health, the companies that were looking to create a more positive culture and address mental health in the workplace. I never told anyone my story. And it took a lot. And I was actually on stage at a conference in Inverness about 6 or 7 years ago, where I shared that story for the first time. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it was through that I realized, how can I expect other people to be open and vulnerable with their experiences if I'm not willing to be open and vulnerable with mine? Because even though I had a significant amount of experience working in this field and helping other people, I think at some level I still viewed vulnerability and asking for help and support and sharing our stuff as a sign of weakness. And we still have these views in Western society. grown men don't cry, soldier on, pull your socks up and get on with it. And it's really, really concerning that in 2024, that we still hold on to these notions. And Kevin's shared some stats. Some other shocking stats are it's the main cause of death for a man under the age of 50 in Britain today. And that's true across Western society. In the US, we normally have people joining us on these sessions from the US. 4 times as many military personnel in the States die as a result of their own hand than from active combat. You are literally a soldier that puts your life on the line for a living, but you're 4 times more likely to die as a result of yourself than one of the enemy combatants. And it's considering how far we've moved on in society with technology, with communication, with healthcare, that we've still got to the point, as Kevin said, that if you add all the wars on the planet put together and all the human violence put together, it still doesn't kill as many people as suicide does. And even though that is one of the biggest killers on the planet, when you turn on the news, is that what you're being told? We are told about the wars. We are told about the human violence and all the other things. But something that actually has more risk to life, particularly young lives, is putting more people under the ground, is the one thing that we still seem so uncomfortable talking about. And that's why this conversation is called changing the narrative. Because if we reach people when they're struggling, and if we start reframing the conversation, hopefully we can get to people long before they get anywhere near the point where they feel they have no other option. Because I know what that's like from a first-hand perspective. And just on that point, does anyone know, actual question, not a rhetorical one, why it's called committing suicide? Why is the term committing suicide? Go for it. Sarah Burrow, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. It was originally put down as a felon du se, a felony of oneself. So to commit suicide was an act of crime. It was only uncriminalised quite recently, but I don't know the year off the top of my head.
Late 70s. So up until the late 70s, which, you know, for it's not that long ago, that many of us here on this call that would have been alive when it was still against the law, that it was a criminal offence. In many parts of the world, it still is actually an offence. As much as it's changed here, it hasn't changed everywhere. But we still call it committing suicide. If someone is threatening to take their own life, who do we call? Who's the first people to turn up on the scene? Paul, yes,
Police.
You're right. It is the blue lights, but which blue lights?
Police, ambulance.
The police.
Hmm.
Are police trained
Rozzers.
psychiatric or mental health professionals?
Definitely not.
No,
Not
absolutely.
as trained as the other emergency services now.
Of course. So, in a way, it's still being dealt with criminally if the police are the first on the scene. When I woke up when I came to in hospital after my attempt, the first person I spoke to was a police officer to ensure that I wasn't a threat to anyone else or to myself, because ultimately I would have been sectioned under the Mental Health Act here in the UK, right? So in a way, it's kind of still dealt with as a bit of a criminal issue. It's not quite, but this is not how we should be dealing with people that are severely compromised. They need help and support. And that is one of the big concerns. That was in 2003. That was 21 years ago. It hasn't changed that much since then. And there is sadly still nowhere near enough support available for people around the world, even in Britain, where we would like to think we're better than maybe other parts of the world. We still aren't great with this. And Laura, it may well have changed. I try and use the term someone's taken their own life. Even if it has changed, it hasn't changed in the cultural narrative, if that makes sense. Someone somewhere may have decided these terms are not okay, but we still use the term committing suicide, and absolutely the services that are available are at a breaking point. Now, I've spoken about my first-hand experience. I want to add to that over the years we've dealt with many different organizations and for me individuals that are struggling. And I could do that from a professional perspective because I can have a bit of professional objectivity. You kind of have to remove yourself a little bit, because if you get too emotionally involved, you can't do this work anymore, if that makes sense. But a few years ago, one of my best friends, who I speak to, well, I used to speak to all the time, was really hit by what had happened during COVID, and it kind of destroyed his business, a relationship broken up. And I knew he was going through a tough time, and I was speaking to him every day. And we were basically due to be going away for the weekend together with a few of our friends. And a few days before, I was trying to get a hold of him, and I just couldn't reach him. And I kept calling and calling, and his phone was off. And I said, "This is not like Dan." Essentially, it came to the point where I had to reach out to other friends and his family just to find out where is he, because he's not answering my calls, and we're going away in a couple of days. And he had got to the same point I had, and he'd chosen that it was time to go. He was successful in his act, and I think that actually hit me a lot harder than when I had my own experience. I took that quite personally, and a lot of people said, "Well, you couldn't have known." I did know. He told me. I was speaking to him every day until he stopped speaking to me. It's not your job. It actually is. I work in mental health. This is my job. I'm not an accountant or an IT technician. I actually do this for a living. And there was a point in the immediate aftermath of that, I felt like a fraud and like I could never do this work again, and I wanted to run away. But I think when I went through that experience and really started to reflect on what this meant to me, I think that further reinvigorated my desire to be able to make a positive difference and to be willing to speak about this more, because we don't speak about it unless someone's had a first-hand experience, or something's happened in the mainstream narrative where someone high profile or a celebrity has taken their own life. Other than that, we don't talk about it, because if we did, I think we'd be shocked. It's kind of like miscarriage is one of those issues that we don't talk about. So it's, what was it, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage. Everybody either has had or knows someone that's had a miscarriage, right? But we don't talk about it, so you don't know how common an issue it is. The more we talk about things, the more we can actually come together to take collective action to address these concerns. The people that make the decisions, people in positions of authority, act against the things that are important to us because they want our votes. They want us to support them, right? But if we aren't talking about this, then, and we aren't demanding action, then nothing changes. And I think it's about time that we come together, not wait for someone else to fix this, to start talking about an issue that is robbing us of more young lives than any other single issue. So I am kind of at a point now where I'd really like to explore, if it's such a big issue, if so many people are experiencing it, if so many people have these thoughts, why do we not talk about it? Why do we not ask for help? Why are we not seeking out support? What are the barriers? Again, actual question, not a rhetorical one. Shane, yeah, absolutely. Paul, you've got your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It was interesting, the whole conversation earlier about committing suicide. I've been a mental health first aider and a mental health lead in industry before joining this academic institution for about 10 years. And that was an authorization that myself and some of my colleagues held. I've spent 10 years training myself never to use the words commit suicide for the reasons that you've discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Taking one's life, yeah. Unfortunately, I've been in that position to have the conversation with someone where you look them over your glasses or you look them directly in the eye and say, are you considering taking your own life based on what they were saying? Why is it not talked about? It certainly used to be a stigma, huge, and therefore it just wouldn't be talked about until after the event, and literally after the event. And that's no use to anybody because you can't have a two-way conversation then.
Absolutely.
I think we've learned that we can talk about it now, and sessions like this definitely open the narrative to more people in a better way. Confidence, I think, is the major thing. Confidence, to furrow the brow and start the conversation, because the other person may not start the conversation. Confidence that you're not going to make a situation worse by actually mentioning it in the first place. And confidence as to how you are going to respond, dependent on what you hear back, if anything. So it's confidence not to make a bad situation worse. I think that's a huge reason why a lot of people won't engage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree that it's a heavy subject. We think that if we talk about it, it'll get worse. I actually remember I used to do a lot of media work. And I've done BBC, Sky News. And I actually remember there was a period where I can't remember, there was someone high profile that had taken their own life. And the BBC weren't comfortable with me talking about, I'm sorry to say this publicly, but they weren't comfortable with me directly talking about suicide, because the assumption was if we talk about suicide, then more people might take their own life. We said, well, hold on, you've got no problem talking about wars and terrorism and whatever else that you talk about, you know, all the horrible things that happen in the world. Does that mean that there's going to be more wars and terrorism and murders and violence and rapes and all these kind of horrible things because you're willing to talk about those things? It didn't make sense. I couldn't compute that. But there was a discomfort there. I can totally appreciate if you're talking about methods and strategies to end your own life. I totally accept that. But actually discussing the subject, making it taboo and off limits, that didn't make sense. And yeah, we in Britain, we have a suicide minister. We also have a minister for loneliness and a minister for all these kind of things. And actually, year on year, if you look at the data, it's getting worse. The suicides in all UK countries have increased over the last couple of years. So it's like, well, hold on, this doesn't make sense. We need to get better at having uncomfortable conversations, because that's how you grow, right? Not to ignore and pretend like everything's okay. So what we're saying here is absolutely there is guilt, shame, stigma associated with this subject. If you could bear with me a second, we have some technical issues with our technology today. There were some slides that accompany today's session, but they don't seem to be working. Now, let me see if I can get them up. If not, I will wing it. It's all good. So give me a second. All right. I am hoping that these slides will be showing up. So just while that's running through, let's just start. You know, one of the things that we spoke about is guilt and shame. That was some of the points that came up in the chat. Talk to me about that.
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt. There's a few people,
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you can see, but there's about 4 people that have got their hands up. I don't know if you can see your end.
I think that's when we asked the questions right at the beginning. I could be wrong.
Just to let you know.
Thank you, I appreciate that. As I said, we are having some issues with Teams today. The slides should be loading up now. If you have your hand up and you do have a question, now's your chance. And I can see you're the only one I can see with your hand up. Did you have something that you wanted to share? Okay.
That was a response to one of your questions earlier on.
All good, no worries. Thank you. And if anyone else does have your hands up and you'd like to share something, feel free to get involved. So I'm not sure if you can see the slides yet. And if not, don't worry, we will share them with you once we've finished. Can you see them?
No, I can't see, but I just want to compliment because I feel like I work in a spinal cord injury as a therapy assistant. And then we have more patients now that is here because they attempt suicide. And then when they try to take their own life and they don't succeed, sometimes they need spare time and more attention. And then I think it's still kind of, they feel guilty because they fail. They think like, I couldn't even do that. And then sometimes I feel like they also don't have the right support, not just in a hospital, but in society, because they feel like they still need, but they feel guilty. Like I failed to ask for help. And then I tried to take my own life and I did not manage to do that either. And then I don't feel that everybody has the right support. That's why I chose to participate today. And then I keep trying to seek for more information to see how to deal with them, because sometimes they just want to be listened, and then sometimes they don't want you to say anything, or they don't want to externate that feeling. And then it's quite hard because it's not much of a, it's still kind of is open these days, but it's still kind of in the back of the mind. If they say something, they are giving you trouble, they are giving you more work, and they don't want to be that person, and they don't want to feel like, oh, I'm open my problems and I'm giving you more things to do. And then I feel like we need more support for those kind of things, for not just for the family members to know how to communicate, but for them to feel like, yeah, I tried, I failed to do that. And now it's a little bit harder because I'm put myself in a wheelchair and I have all these limitations and I need help and more assistance that I was before trying. And then it is quite heavy.
This is a good point, and as I said, it's one I can personally relate to. I've failed at life, and then I failed at ending life, and it was a double whammy for me. And I can imagine many people feel that way, and some people may choose course of action that leave them with permanent injuries or life-altering consequences. I was lucky that I fully recovered. But this is really where it's important to consider these people really need help and support, compassion and empathy. Because no one is going to be as hard on them as they are being on themselves. And this is something for us to consider. And this is talking to this point around guilt and shame. Can you all now see the slides? I'm sorry we've had such technical issues today. So you can see the slides and my face in the middle of them, right? Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Cool. So guilt essentially is, for example, if Isis was speaking and I spoke over Isis and I didn't let her speak, and then afterwards I might feel really guilty. It's like, oh, Isis was sharing something and I didn't let her speak, and I feel bad for that. But with guilt, I can make amends. I can find ways to make it up to Isis. Does that make sense? Shame is where I feel ashamed of myself, not necessarily attached to one experience. It's layered up and it's just, I'm a terrible person. You know, what that act may have contributed to that, but this is how I feel about myself. Does that make sense? And what a lot of people tend to feel when they are struggling with their mental health, to the point where they're experiencing suicidal ideation, which essentially means they're thinking about taking their own life, is because they feel like a failure as a human being. Guilt, okay, yeah, sometimes we do things that are wrong, that upset others, or we upset ourselves, but you can do something to make up for that. Shame is harder to recover from. And also, we've got to bear in mind, attached to that is stigma. What is stigma? What does that mean, the term stigma?
It's when something's like a taboo.
Yeah.
Society thinks of it as something that is shameful.
Yes, absolutely. So essentially, the dictionary definition is something seen in a negative way because of a particular characteristic or an attribute. How many of you would agree there is stigma associated with both mental health and suicidality, or someone that's considering or thinking about reflecting on taking their own life? Absolutely. Huge stigma, even today. We have a huge amount of work to tackle this societal stigma. Varies depending on where in the world you are, but there is nowhere on the planet I've come across there is not a stigma associated with this subject. And we have projects all over the world, Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, Eastern Europe. And I'm yet to come across a culture or a region where there isn't any stigma associated with this, which is something we need to tackle. So what kind, talk to me about that stigma. What kind of stigma is associated with the subject that we are talking about?
I think the stigma for me is that people are frightened of admitting it, because certainly at work, because they feel that they'll be seen as, oh, if they can't hold their own self together, how can they run this project? Or, they're very weak, or, oh God, how long are they going to go off sick for? And things like that. People just don't want to admit it, and they just keep it to themselves.
Absolutely. So there's quite a lot to unpack there, because firstly, it's the societal image, and then there's the self-image. So let's kind of talk about stigma at two levels. So as you kind of already pretty much summed up, there's the public stigma, what everybody thinks about this subject, generally speaking. I'm not saying across the board, but the general narrative is there is a stigma associated with this subject. And then there's the self-stigma, where we start to internalize that. So exactly as we've kind of discussed, the stigma, the public stigma, could be weakness. They're not good enough. They can't cope. They're weak. They're pathetic. They can't cope. Now, with that, there will be a reaction. People might avoid you because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to engage. They're worried about saying or doing the wrong thing, so they just do nothing. If someone has sprained their ankle playing football, is there a stigma associated with that? Would you avoid them? Yeah, go for it.
I think just slightly changing what you were saying, the other thing is we still sadly work in a society where there are many of us that work in mental health. Some people I've met over 40 years, I've often wondered why on earth they actually work in this subject, because they don't appear to have any compassion. But one thing that I used to hear an awful lot was, oh, it's selfish. How could they do that to themselves? How could they leave a wife and 2 children? How could they do that? They're not really a very nice person anyway. Almost as if to say, oh, anyway, they're better off dead, because what did they bring to the table? Which I think is really awful.
Absolutely. And it's interesting.
Isn't that like victim blaming? I guess so, yeah.
But also the flip side of that is someone can get to the point where it's like, the world's better off without me. I'm worthless. I'm pointless, because they believe what people are saying about the subject, and they will internalize that. And this is the self-stigma. I'm weak. I'm incompetent. I'm pathetic. I can't cope. I'm not good enough. There is no point me being here. So it's interesting that we've got this kind of public stigma that people take on board, and they start to believe that. So if we want to change how people feel about it, we need to change how we feel about this subject as a society. We don't need to reach everyone, but we need to reach a critical mass, enough people that become the critical mass that change the narrative. Because right now, too many people are uncomfortable and avoid this subject, might find that people that are struggling with their mental health or suicide ideation might be passed up for promotion. They might struggle with relationships. They might find that they are struggling in their careers, in society and community. They might feel lonely, because part of that is then they're not thinking, I'm not good enough. So they're not going to even try to progress in life, to put themselves forward for jobs, for promotion, not put effort into relationships, or even try and find a relationship. So you kind of end up in this situation where the general public stigma is affecting, number one, people putting their hand up and asking for help because they don't want to admit where they're at, but also it's directly affecting how they feel about their life. Paul, I just noticed you had your hand up again. Go for it.
Thank you. I wanted to come back to what you said about the broken ankle, because we skirted over that real quick. So somebody is incapacitated or has a bandaged ankle. We think, yes, but at least they can function in so many other areas. They might just have some temporary immobility. Yeah, we can get them around, or they can get themselves around with a crutch. And I'm using metaphors and practicals here.
Of course, yeah.
But if somebody has I'm sorry to do it, the air quote, mental health issues. The stigma and the self and group stigma of public stigma is unstable. Can't cope. Better not give them any more responsibility. Cannot cope in this pressurized, even if it's air quotes, healthy pressure situation. And as you say, that just forces people to, unfortunately, retreat. It forces people also to become isolated from both sides. And that, I think, is why we, and I mean society, not the learned group on this call, society just doesn't understand that, as you rightly said, and I was going to bring something up about the old term committing suicide, was committing to the act of ending your own life because you suddenly become extremely focused and you suddenly plan how you're going to do it, and all those other big pieces of energy that you may well be talking about on this call. People can cope. There's just aspects of their life that they can't cope with, which ultimately drives them. You know, we used to call it the straw that breaks the camel's back, don't we?
Absolutely.
And it can appear to others, what, that one innocuous thing caused them to do that, and you go, no, it was number 98 of a bunch of things over a period of time. And that's where, certainly in sort of my role in the past, where I listened intently to, I'm trying to find the broken ankle. I'm trying to find that thing, and that's where we can start the conversation, or very quickly refer you, not just signpost, but refer you to more professional help. Yeah.
And we're going to come to that, and I appreciate my biggest challenge today. I've got a huge subject and a tiny amount of time to cover it. We don't have enough time by a long shot to cover this, but part of this, and I've just seen a couple of messages in the chat about being compassionate, showing empathy, and just being present to people. And this is the challenge, that part of the issue is that we aren't. Doesn't matter where you live, but we don't meaningfully inquire and engage people in discussions about their welfare and well-being. What's the most common question asked on the planet?
Are you okay?
How are you?
How are you?
How are you? Most pointless question you can ever ask. Why? Doesn't matter what language. ¿Cómo está? ¿Cómo se va? Ni hao. Whatever language you speak, you ask that question. Why is it a pointless question?
Because people don't really say what the hell they really feel.
No one's honest.
Maybe they don't know.
Doesn't mean how are you? It's just a hello.
Yeah, of course. So this is an interesting point. Firstly, the person responding, what kind of normal response do we get? I'm fine, can't complain, not bad, I'm right. Can't complain. You kind of just did by saying you can't complain. Not bad. What are you? If you're not bad, you're not good. What are you then? Someone said to me the other day, and I asked them, how are you? And they said, I'm still alive. I'm like, oh shit, you got cancer or something? What's wrong? And it was just their normal response. There was nothing wrong with them. But it's just a strange thing to say to someone when they ask you, how are you? I'm still alive, or surviving. Has anyone ever heard the term surviving?
Yeah.
When someone's asked how you are.
So perhaps then, is the world's most important question, and the one that can really help others, it's just been demoted to a social grace, and therefore it doesn't even get a decent response because it's just a social grace.
It's a social nicety. I remember when I lived in New York, you ask people, how are you in New York? You know what the common response is?
No.
Hey, how are you? They didn't answer the question, just asked the question back. It's just we were exchanging platitudes, but not actually having a discussion. So here's one of the things that I'm going to suggest. There was a campaign we were involved with several years ago from an organization called Time to Talk. And it was hashtag Ask Twice. If I say to you, how are you? And you say, I'm fine, thank you. But then I follow up with, how are you really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, I see you've got your hand up. I'm not sure if you had a point, but whilst I've got you here, Lisa Bruce, you're number one with my hand up. May I ask you, how are you? What's your standard default response to that question? Not sure if you're still there. There we go. Can you hear us, Lisa? Okay, we'll go to who's number 2. Hand number 2 was Milena. You there, Milena?
Yes,
No? Okay.
I'm here, but obviously my hand was up for another reason, maybe answering your question. But however, when asked how are you, we often just say we're okay.
Okay, what's
You're muted.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Silent. Your microphone's off.
Oh, somebody muted me. I was obviously talking too much. No worries. Milena, just coming back to you, what is your normal standard response when someone asks you how you are?
I'm good.
You're good. Great.
That's
so
standard.
that's your
Matter how
default response.
I'm good.
But Milena, how are you really?
At this moment, I'm very good.
Fantastic. Now, we did get a different answer the second time round. Firstly, she stopped. She said, she paused, reflected, thought about how she was, and answered. It's a shame we can't see Milena, because one of the things that you would have seen, and I don't trust me on this, I'm going to encourage you to play with this. When you ask someone a question and they are giving you a genuine, authentic response, they will look for the answer. Let's try this with someone I can see. So I can only see a handful of you at the moment. Let me see who we can see. All right, who's this? Hayley Slatt, would you like to play with us for a second?
Yeah, go on then.
All right, what standard default response? Don't think about it. How do you normally answer the question? How are you?
I normally say I'm good, thank you. How are you?
You're good, thank you.
Yeah.
How are you really right now? How are you really?
I am actually good. However, I can give you an example of this from last week at work. We've had somebody who has been a bit absent at work and not turning up, and I happened to be at this site at this particular time when he came in to work late, and he arrived in shorts and t-shirt, which is very out of character, and I made sure I bumped into him in the kitchen and I asked him, how are you? And he first of all responded with, yeah, I'm fine. And then I gave him a few seconds and asked him again, and then the front doors opened. So yeah, it definitely works.
Thanks, Hayley. But let me ask you again. So the second question, which I'd really like an answer on, how are you really right now?
Yeah, I'm good. I am really good. Yeah, really good.
Okay. All right. What did you observe? When I asked Hayley how she really is, what did you notice?
She thought about it more.
How do you know she was thinking about it? What gave it away?
Well, her facial expression.
Yeah.
Okay. What specifically about her facial expression?
She wasn't looking at you.
Oh, well, I'm looking at him down here. I'm looking at his. But yeah, I looked away. Yeah.
So, do you know how we know she's looking for the answer?
Kind of roll of the eyes.
Look up.
Yeah.
She looked up because she was actually physically looking for the answer to the question. You didn't see that on the default response because she didn't need to look for an answer. She had one pre-prepared. It was the default response, the automatic response. When you engage someone and you ask a question that they have to give you an authentic response, they're literally trying to access their mental resources to be able to answer that question. So you'll see them literally looking for the question. Let's try another one. So who else have we got? So Zoe, I'm going to play with you on this one if you're okay to do that. Zoe Mason.
Hello.
So that's the most common question. People know how to answer that question because they've heard it 1,000 times before, right? 1,000,000 times before. Zoe, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10?
Probably about a 7 today.
Okay. The vast majority of people, we've actually been involved with a study on this. I'm talking about 75 to 80% of people plus will say 7 out of 10. Why?
Because it's on the edge of better.
It's positive.
Yeah.
Because basically 7 isn't saying anything. It's a nothing number. It's not bad. It's not good. You know, if you're 10 people, oh my God, what's going on? You must, if you just won the lottery or something. If it's 5 or below, they'd be worried about you. So people give the number 7, even though you did stop and think about it. It's kind of a default setting. Does that make sense? 7 is an easy number. Let's try something different.
7's a distinction. 7 out of 10, 70%. That must be good.
Happy days.
Yeah, it doesn't warrant any further inquiry, right? Zoe, how are you doing on a scale of 4 to 19?
Oh. 14.
14. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, again, do we notice the difference? Do we see how she had to stop and it's like, oh, okay, hold on. This question's kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I'm not quite sure how to answer this. I'm going to have to actually think about it. Don't ask a question that people have already got a pre-prepared response to. Ask a question that people have to stop. There are many examples of more productive questions. How's your bridge? For those of you who attended our sessions before, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, you'll find on our YouTube channel videos of the bridge. We'll send you a recording of it. What's the highlight of your week? What's going on for you? How are you feeling? What would you like to share? What support do you need? There are many questions you can ask that will stop people and get them to think. And this is really what I would like us to do. And this essentially, these nuggets are drawn from our mental health champions program. This is kind of our leading sort of program that we're delivering now around the world. We have a few mental health champions here on the course. If you are a mental health champion, put your hand up. I can see Bianca. I'm not sure who else, but we've definitely got Faye. Wonderful. So we've got a few of our champions here on the call. Amazing. Thank you for being here. And essentially, this program was...
While I think about it, when you were saying, how are you? I don't know how other people find, but I think sometimes it's an automatic response to say, oh, I'm fine, thank you. But that is because sometimes we might be fine, bit fed up, but fine. But what about physically? So for me, I have sort of like chronic pain and have had for years. Nobody ever says to me, how's your pain nowadays? Right? It's almost because they think, oh, there's Laura, she's got chronic pain. So we won't bother asking her about that. But I think sometimes at work, people don't always ask you that second time, how are you really? Because everybody is so task orientated. They've got to do this and they've got to do that. They don't want to stop and talk to you. You know,
absolutely, because we don't have the time, and this is something that is really concerning. I'm a Londoner. London was recently voted as the loneliest city on the planet. Kid you not, there's 9 million people here because we feel lonely and isolated. But there's a big difference between being lonely and being alone, and this is really where I think we do need to take steps to change the narrative. Showing love, compassion, empathy, and support for those around you is a way that we make things better. And with the apologies that I know some of you put your hands up, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I really do want to share this model with you because it's a key part of today's discussion. And this is what we developed, is a structure to be able to provide safeguarding, signposting, and support to equip all of us to be able to take positive action to support people around us. And as much as it's from our Mental Health Champions program, if I had to give this program a better name, it would be How to Be a Better Human Being. Every single one of us, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, what role you play in society, should be able to recognize when people are compromised. That video we played at the beginning perfectly highlights it's not what you think it is. It's not necessarily someone that's down in the dumps and miserable and withdrawn. It's changes to their normal behavior. And if we start to inform ourselves and start to recognize what changes people might go through, we might pick up when someone is struggling long before they become a statistic. And in that video, I guarantee if you've never seen that before and you hadn't been trained on this, the vast majority of people would have expected the guy that was always sad, down in the dumps and miserable was the one that was struggling. But actually the other one was masking. And then in situations like that, develop a personal connection. Don't go straight in with, tell me what's going on, tell me how you're feeling, because ultimately, as we've established, not only is the person asking, but the person responding generally isn't comfortable. You kind of got to create the safety and the comfort that will allow people to feel safe to share. So our job is to hold space and create those safe containers for people to be able to express themselves. So develop a personal connection. Start talking about things that are easy, accessible subjects, sport, the weather, your family, until you get to the point where that person feels safe and comfortable enough with you to start to open up more about other things.
Do you know what I'm thinking? If you don't mind me saying just really quickly, you know, like you can't give what you don't have. I wonder the extent to which people find it difficult to initiate conversations like that because maybe they're not comfortable with their own selves.
Absolutely.
And if we could get more comfortable with our own selves and how we're feeling, then that would then enable us to be like that with other people. That's just how I see it.
Totally agree. Like I wouldn't have been able to be more open and direct about conversations around kind of tackling this issue of people taking their own lives if I didn't get comfortable with my experience around that. That happened like 6 or 7 years ago, 15 years after the act. And also, I'm just going to ask, because I can already see people are starting to leave and we still got stuff to cover. If there are any other questions or comments, I'm happy to stay on, but I just want to finish this model so everyone is able to get full value from the session. So it's engaging in conversation, meaningful dialogue, starting with accessible conversations and then moving on to things where people are more likely to open up. Actively encouraging people to seek help and ask for support. Let's reframe vulnerability, not as a weakness, but as a strength. I genuinely believe it's a stronger person that can put their hand up and say, I'm struggling, I'm having a tough time, I need help. Hiding it for me is a sign of weakness, and I'm talking from my own experience. So we need to reframe this and position vulnerability as a superpower. Listening with empathy. You're not trying to fix someone. You're not waiting for them to stop talking so you can say your piece. Just be there. Give them an ear and a shoulder and let them express themselves. In many situations, someone, by getting things off their chest, might find that they are thinking about their experience differently. But because we live in a world where it's hard to get access to professional resources and a lot of people aren't comfortable having these conversations, generally there aren't many people out there that are willing and comfortable listening to you talking about the things that have really got you struggling and put you in a dark place. Does that make sense? You don't need to be a trained psychiatric professional or mental health resource to listen to someone. Don't give advice. Don't give them ways of being able to cope with it. Just listen and ask questions, show empathy. And the most important thing, safeguard, signpost, and support. If you're worried about someone, take action. It's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. Signposts, know where you can refer them to. If you work in a company and there are people in your company that are struggling, know what resources are available, how we can get support, and know what national resources are available in whichever country that you live in. There are many resources online. Most organizations have employee assistance programs that are woefully underutilized, and there are lots of resources on our website as well. And just kind of the key thing for me today is not just for us to come together and have a conversation, but for you to decide what action are you going to take? What are you going to do? How can you contribute to changing the narrative? Because it starts with a few voices, and when other voices join that discussion and more people get involved, after a while it becomes the mainstream narrative. And every single one of us has the opportunity to contribute to that. Talk about this in your communities, in your societies, in your workplaces. Just as we're starting to talk about other things that we never used to talk about. Menopause is something that most of our clients are talking about now. Women have been having menopause ever since women have been on the planet. Why is it over the last 3 years we started talking about it? There are a whole range of issues, race and diversity issues, gender issues. I could go on. Suddenly these things have become popular, but these issues have existed as long as humans have existed, as has suicide. But sadly, this issue seems to be getting much, much worse. So this is really your homework. I'm begging each of you to get involved with being a part of the solution. How are you going to be able to change the narrative when you're coming across people that are struggling? There are free resources on our website, which you can check out, which is www.stress.org.uk. Kevin will put that in the chat just now. There is our newsletter where you'll find out about the monthly webinars we do. These will always be free of charge. We do one of these every single month. Sometimes we have 600, 700, 800 people that turn up for these. So please do stay in touch with us and be aware of all the things that we're working on. For those of you that are interested, this is just a kind of a very tiny taster of our Public Mental Health Champions program. For those of you that have done the program, if you could just drop in like your key takeaways from that program. We have our next one coming up in a few weeks' time. Sorry, in November. And there is a special bonus for you that if you would like to join that one. So we will send details of that, and you're going to get an extra £50 off. There's already an early bird booking of £200 off, and you can get another £50 for attending this webinar. So we will share details of that tomorrow. There is a code there if you want to just cut and paste or write that code down, webinar 50. If you are interested, you'll get information in your inbox tomorrow. We have our online learning platform as well. So there's some information on that will be shared with you. So feel free to look at that. And there's 50% off that for the entire package for 1 month if you'd like to join. So it's not very expensive at all. So yes, and as I mentioned, the support resources were shared earlier in the chat. This will also be on the email that comes out to you. We can only continue to do this work with the support that we get from the general public. We do not have any external funding. We do this off our own back. So if any of you are able to support us, even a few pounds can make a difference to contributing to us continuing to do all the non-commercial work that we do. So as I said, either way, we will find a way to continue doing this, but any support is much appreciated.